One of the Forestry Division's dedicated task forces takes care of all things animal in the Grim Realms. Its official designation Zeta Omicron, but it's easier to remember them by their nickname, the Softies. After some espionage and sneaking around, I had found my target. By that time, I had more or less kidnapped him from the Forest Division briefly to coax the story out from him. Disguised as his driver, I was continuing on aimlessly down the highway when the agent understood what was up. He begged me to spare his life. It was after some persuasion that I calmed him down, and despite the botched attempt, I started asking my questions. The conversation was recorded on my digital device, and I have recreated it here verbatim, or mostly if not, edited a bit here and there. It could be he was telling me what I wanted to hear, but that's a win-win as a writer, if you ask me. Although I doubt everything he told me was true, but that's par when you work for Justice Grimm. I'll leave it to my readers to make that call for now. I have redacted names and the stuff that I need to this time anyway, or at least whenever I feel the need to, and believe me, there was absolutely no need to. I'm picking up on the interview after the shock of me borrowing his vehicle had worn off. Softy agent, have you actually been inside the 100-acre wood before? I mean, I know it's a very tight quarantine, but if anyone gets to go in, it's gotta be you guys, right?
Please just call me Agent for now.
You got it, sorry. Please continue.
Yes, I suppose I should since you've gone through the trouble. Any chance we can start heading back at least?
No, sir. Not with this non-existent traffic.
Oh dear. It's one of those kind of kidnappings. I'm not getting out of this alive, aren't I?
Just start yapping about the woods and I'll swing us back when I've felt that we finished trading stories to my liking. Now, if you please.
How about a scheduled bathroom break pullover?
Author's note. It was at this point that I tossed him an empty Gatorade bottle.
See, well then, as you can imagine, just getting hired by Zeta Omicron 5 took me 5 years of study and pressure to achieve the grades that I needed. Working with animals that look human is not the same as an animal that can speak. So for all instances of either, we need a sort of liaison. Some animals appear to us to be speaking, but it's like the result of our own minds because certain animals boost the psychic signals that can overlay the general messages to humans who are listening without the right ears to hear. The total anthropomorphic animal stands like a bipedal and maybe even seen wearing human clothes. The trick is to determine if that creature is in a natural habitat. Could it form to fit itself into those human clothes? Those are very dangerous too, but nothing like the cognito creatures like Winnie the Pooh, who was both scary and dangerous.
And the liaisons, is that what Christopher Robin was?
Christopher Robin is actually a title, a job description. But yes, the boy seen on screen that interacts with the inhabitant of 100 acre of wood is indeed based on one of the agents of Omicron. Although the visual we are given in the movies and books is a whitewashed version of the truth. For instance, as a safety measure, no small child was ever permitted access. All Christopher Robins had to be trained adults, and most were well-seasoned agents. And to be honest, even the toughest SOB tends to go numb and dumb after a year working there. Especially being a Robin agent.
Go on.
Well, what do you want to know?
Everything.
Especially the lies.
Especially the lies.
Oh, great, you're one of those kind of kidnappers. I'm not getting out of this alive, aren't I?
No, what good is a dead source? Didn't you read what happened to Elmer Fudd?
Yeah, I heard he tried to stuff himself out, but you froze just in time and right before he confessed to the whole enchilada, right?
Yeah. Technically, I'm not really allowed to say even with an agency ranks.
I see, well, that's just compartmentalization for you.
I just want your story. I'm not supposed to arrest anyone. I arranged all of this because agents like you are very difficult to sit down with even a brief period of time, and if I bring my editor a nice, big, juicy story from the task force liaison, he will give me an equally fat and juicy parking pass.
Yeah, good luck with that. I've been trying for that well since forever. All right, well, let's start at the very beginning then. Before Justice Grimm, there was only a small unionized animal welfare division. What most people don't know is that the lions, tigers, and bears and mice, and cats, dogs, lizard, foxes, badgers, porcupines, whales, alligators, crocodiles, snakes, fish, ants, possums, bats, frog, snakes, rats, birds, owls, pigs, sheep, goats, horses, anteaters, armadillos, elephants, giraffes, simian primates, spiders, ducks, grasshoppers, sugar gliders, worms, unicorns, hydras, and various gorgons had no representation before the Animal Welfare Division. In fact, it could be said that the AWD was the progenitor of Justice Grimm. But before even the ODD, there was the small board of animal volunteers and rehabilitation centers. They took in animals who would have become displaced or taken from the wild. You see, it all started when Mowgli set fire to Shere Khan's tail in the Jungle Book. As a tiger ran for its life, it spread the flames, setting the grassland on fire. In the movie, the rain saves the day, but that only happened days after the fire had already burned most of that area to ash. The local village that Mowgli is seen going into would eventually find the tiger bones scorched, and when Mowgli confessed, they arrested him. Killing tigers was not for a boy to do in this culture. Tigers were the punishment gods to them, and this unexpected death of Khan could not go unpunished. Mowgli had plenty of room to call for self-defense, and the matter ended up with the wolf-raised child spending a few weeks in the isolation pit. A tiger pit without spikes, nonetheless. But once Mowgli was freed, he vowed to the elders to make it his duty to protect the animals instead of destroying them. So it happened as the more the like-minded people supported Mowgli's initiative, the more of the AWD Foundation grew. Now, fast forward, Mowgli is very old, but a very accomplished agent. His group has managed to find and capture the stashes of animals from the rescuers down under, the abandoned dogs from Up, the refugee lions from the Lion King movie, as well as the surviving hyenas from Simba's Little Holocaust. The more notable were the various species of alligators and crocodiles from a wide range of movies. This was no accident. There was pressure for movies to use more of that particular reptile in parts like henchmen or goons. They were dressed in uniforms from Shriner to a sailor, and that's how we started the Naval Amphibious Intel Division. And the rest is history. Once the crocodiles had been trained to work for the animal traffic solid waste removal, we put that good use as well. Usually we had to regain control over the alligators, and that just made things difficult as they made their way into the neighboring realms. So often that those suspicions been aroused, followed usually by a relocation effort that brought a large concentration of alligators into our centers. An extermination effort had to be done, and the AWD was the ones that had to pull it off. And they did. I wasn't there for it, but there are plenty alive still who recall the sounds of hundreds of gators in these reservoirs and how the poisons were too slow or they went uneaten, and in one of those reservoirs that they destroyed was near to a sewage plant. I'll let your imagination go from there. So the culling became an unsolvable problem. That put the Irons big time on AWD, and it was bankrupt before being reclaimed by the Forestry Justice Ministry. And well, it goes without saying everything happens in the forest. If you recall the story behind the crisis actors who substituted for some of the abducted boys from Pinocchio. That's how the protocol became a common practice throughout all of the known fictional realms. In short, Hansel was one such agent, but I know we're not supposed to talk about that, so I'll move on. The Forest Justice Ministry reviewed and refined the AWD, and about that time was when I joined. It was nicknamed the Huntsman Project back then, and we, for our part, did not get along with playing with other agencies. We were very rebellious against the Forest Ministry, but it wasn't until the unification and monopolization of Justice Central that brought Ord to heel. And we paid for it, all those mistakes we made. Thankfully, I'm a talkative kind of guy. When you get to know me, actually, if you get my drift, I am sure you do actually anyway. Let's just say that a lot of animals were being moved, some for evidence, some for food. Some were just commuting to work and such. It became very noisy, smelly, and the curators for the various parks were complaining, and it was one of these creatures with complaints who was nicknamed Pooh, another was Eeyore, a joey named Roo, who wasn't really Kangas. And that story is really sad. No one really wanted to tell Roo that his father can be seen in the rescuers down under. That entire presentation is a farce, believe it or not. Kanga is also in that movie, but they skipped the part that mentions how the poacher who dies at the end of the film left all those animals to starve, and they all would have too if it hadn't been for the agent Christopher Robin. His efforts to liberate the animals from that hideaway could fill a book into itself. They cycled through 5 task forces. I remember some of the names. You should look one of them up. I believe one of them was Rincon 7, the Rattleheads, Botus Epsilon 14, also known as Moltres Vegas, Sigma, Beta 5 aka, the Star Born and Beta Gamma 5, the 3 blind mice, and then there was my task force, the Redacted. Whoa, did you just expunge my dialogue in live time? Well, I digress. Of all the task forces assigned to OWD, we became the caretakers, having to find foster homes for the dangerous and wild animals. It would require that we be without fear around him, hence the Christopher Robin agent. And technically the books and movies confuse it a little bit, if you know what I mean. Of course you know what I mean. You work for Justice Grimm too. Conversations with co-workers on the record, especially in our line of work, right? Moving on. So the name was a memorial, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that the Chief Warden as a posthumous title would eventually become the curator of 100-acre woods.
My next question to you is this: what forced the 100-acre wood to be burned to the ground and quarantined? For my reader's sake, I have to at least get some juicy disclosure, even if the guys at the security redacted all for some reason. Nothing is going to get back to you. I mean, technically, it's also my job to make sure that doesn't happen.
Double duty, hard damn shame. Well, I can give you something about the liquidation of OWD by Control. I'm sure they'll appreciate the message sent to the other divisions and agencies. But I kind of need to know, can you pull over?
Pressed for time, I'm afraid. Hope you understand.
Yeah, you're a good agent, Redacted. So that's how it works. Don't know if I like it, but like you said, pressed for time. Okay. So yeah, hold on 1 second. Can you not jerk the wheel so harshly or something? Okay, right. So anyway, the AWD and 100-acre wood project, they had a donkey from the Pinocchio fiasco. He's the only donkey in that movie that could still talk. There was also a white rabbit with extreme PTSD who was recovered from the White Heart Flood relocation initiative. Poor rabbit was a good gardener, though. Apparently Heartland requires every citizen to attend to some kind of garden, so when he asked to start one of his own, we encouraged him to do so. If we only had gotten the bear to do something constructive other than keep bees, but then again the bear and the hare develop a sort of mercantilism system of trade. It would have made more sense if we had a bull and bear, but I digress. There was, of course, the swine family, the books and the movie show one piglet, but the AWD had several pigs who claimed to be related to Babe, if you may recall, traces his organs to Porky Pig, and so on all the way back to Wilbur. The Pooh named Winnie was the offspring of Balloway the bear, although the curious creature was ultimately the reason why Christopher Robin had died. We immediately noticed his addiction to honey, and we figured as long as he kept doing his beehives and free trade with the residents that RWD wouldn't euthanize the silly old bear. We already mentioned Kanga and Roo Wright, so who else was there? Owl, of course, that crazy bird, he had a wife, and if I recall, her name was Pussycat. They were a nice couple descendant, also Owl claims, from Big Mama the great horned owl from The Fox and the Hound. Who else? Gopher. Well, he's not in the book. Come to think of it, we're not sure where Gopher is from. We don't know. He just burrowed his way past the security barriers. It forced us to do some renovations around the whole 100-acre wood containment zone. The sister biodome was called something else. I can't recall what the code name was, but there was a weasel from the Red Wall realm and a distant relative of Dumbo, who we kept there. The separation would lead to the rural legend that became the Heffalump Psy-Op in order to discourage crossover between the biomes. No resident to attempt to escape more frequently than that bear. I can go on for hours about how that bear failed to escape, but I'm sure you want to know more about Tigger. The worst part of the Tigger story in all of this is not shown in the books or the movies, indeed an apex predator bouncing the residents. In fact, he was pouncing them. They had declawed him, yes, but it didn't help cause here's the big juicy secret. Tigger is the last of his kind, and his kind were the distant cousins of Khan, so do you see how this all goes back to Mowgli and his efforts? And that made it all the more ironic that it would be Shere Khan's family ties that ended Mowgli's vision. Tigger was a hardened killer, and we even took his fangs as well as his claws. In theory, that should have kept the residents of the 100-acre wood safe. Okay, so what I'm about to tell you is still classified, but not entirely, so I'll try to be smart about it. How do I say it? Tigger and Roo were trouble incarnate. They bounced and trounced and played everywhere, and we appreciated that Roo had found a friend and Tigger had an outlet for his energy. It was that unfortunate bond that resulted in the accident where Tigger lost it and killed Roo. Once the blood from his friend touched Tigger's lips, the forest was doomed. He slew them all. Every last one of them. Up to Winnie the Pooh. The two had been locked in battle for lone survivor, but we got the call to terminate both and prevent any prolonged battle. That would really just be sustaining. A brutal, savage, and long-drawn-out death, so the tiger and the bear were put down, and by that time, everything was burning. Containment measures were sealing the breaches, but it was all for nothing. Not one single resident was left to escape.
Yeah, I remember being briefed about the situation by Forestry Division. Complete liquidation of an entire project. What became of the second biome?
We cashiered it for every bit we could. Without Odu, we couldn't take care of those animals. Well, that's what we thought.
That's how Zeta Omicron started.
Yes. And I'm sure your readers will want to know that Tigger was the last of his kind, but we do have a tigresses who is a skilled martial artist. The Softy project has not gone away. Currently, we take care of DreamWorks Zoo, which has pandas and storks and turtles and squids and manta rays, capybaras, as well as buffalo, orangutans, cows, and various species of deer.
So you stay busy. Can you disclose anything you're doing currently?
Nope, sorry. You know how it is. I would if I could, though. Hey, this bottle, should I?
Just toss it in the garbage can when we return to the forest. Oh, and thank you for your time, Agent.
My pleasure. I'm glad I survived another abduction from the Intel Corps. You guys over there sure seem to have all the fun.
Yeah, we do. Author's note. Upon completion of this interview, I did return the agent to his division and managed to dodge any negative repercussions that may have resulted from my hijacking of Justice Transportation. I basically paid a fine that was about the cost of the fuel, the snacks, and the Gatorade bottle. All in all, the cost of the interview was significantly less than what it typically costs to rent the room and cameras and any hush money. Not bad at all.